Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to have so many of you here today at Longwood on this cold day to really, truly, this is all about celebrating science, right? And I hope that all of you have had a chance to spend some time upstairs in the warmth and beauty of our gardens on this cold day as we're preparing for all this weather that's supposedly coming this way. So there really, truly isn't a better place than here. I'm at Longwood today to be this morning. And so, as I was saying, well, just in case if you guys don't know, I'm Paul Redmond. I'm the president and CEO of the organization here. And it's really great to have you here, and we're grateful for you, for our members and our innovators and your support. But we're here to showcase an important aspect of our gardens that, although it's often unseen, it is the foundation for all the beauty that you enjoy every day. And that is the role of science. It has always been here and a part of Longwood's fabric. Here, art and science meet to create beauty. You can't have one without the other. Since our first plant exploration trip in 1954 to the development of the Longwood hybrid water platter in 1960, to more than 130 cultivars, and if that's an unfamiliar term for some of you, that's different kinds of plants, essentially. So 130 cultivars that we have released into the market, science has always been the driving force behind our gardens. Today, that work becomes only more important in a world where plant diversity is under threat, climates are shifting, and the role of science is being questioned outside of our garden walls. That is why we are embarking on a new chapter by formalizing our commitment to science with the development of our Science Strategic Plan. You're going to hear more about our plan and the work that we do, not only on our 1,700 acres, but around the world through the many wonderful partners we work with, including those joining us on stage today. Our goal is not only to continue to have an impact on stewarding our global garden, but to raise awareness of the challenges our ecosystems are facing to invite you to work with us to ensure the beauty of plants endures and inspires us for years to come. Now, I would like to introduce Andres Ambres, who is the Chief Horticulture and Facilities Officer here at Longwood. Andres just joined us in December to guide our strategic efforts across horticulture and facilities, including land management, sustainability, and long-term planning. And so please give Andres a warm welcome. This is his public debut.
Thank you, Paul. There were many things that drew me to the opportunity here at Longwood. It's obviously a beautiful place and a thriving organization, but it was Longwood's commitment to its mission and the organizational culture to do what's right that impressed me the most. Today, once again, Longwood is doing what's right by formalizing its commitment to its scientific work with this new strategic plan. Our science team consists of more than 50 individuals dedicated to advancing the work in key areas of conservation, horticulture and collections, floriculture production, land stewardship and ecology, and soils and composting. You can meet many of them and learn more about the important work they are doing by stopping by the science action stations throughout conservatories today. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kate Santos, our Associate Vice President of Science, to tell you more about the science strategy and to introduce our esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. This moment reflects the work of so many individuals, from our science team to our leadership, to our colleagues across Longwood, and to all of you who support our program and who come to the gardens. It helps to bring science to life each and every day. Seeing this level of participation, this is the largest attendance that we've ever had for a science series program here at Longwood. So really exciting. And I think that just speaks to the shared commitment in this room for science, for plants, and for shaping a resilient and inspiring future. So really it's amazing to just look out and see all of you here. So thank you again for being here. We're so grateful for you to be a part of this conversation today as we begin our next chapter. So you've heard how long science has been a part of Longwood's DNA. What this slide shows is the scope of that work today, spanning global conservation, national leadership, partnerships, and learning at scale. What is different now is that this work is being intentionally aligned around a shared strategy, one designed to help us grow our impact and to meet the challenges ahead. Change is already shaping the landscapes we care for, and our responsibility is to prepare and steward our gardens to remain resilient and vital in this changing world. We are also working to protect the biodiversity that exists with us today, not just to safeguard it in place, but to ensure its persistence into the future. And across our gardens, our natural areas, and our agricultural landscapes, the systems that we care for are closely tied to the food and the water systems people depend upon. So our work will also inform the regenerative and sustainable practices and approaches going forward. And plants are central to all of this, connecting beauty and science in ways that invite engagement and understanding. And at the heart of our work and what guides us forward is the connection between people and plants. And if I were to venture to guess, might be one of the reasons that brought all of you here today. It's that reciprocity that becomes clear the moment you step into a garden or into a natural area. It's one that we seek to recognize and carry with us forward. Our goals are ambitious, and the challenges continue to evolve, underscoring the importance of having a clear plan to navigate the path forward. Guided by our 4 pillars, conserve, grow, sustain, and inspire, we're focusing our efforts to increase our impact. But this is just the beginning. Science has always been at the heart of Longwood Gardens. From extraordinary plants that capture the imagination to landscapes and displays that inspire wonder, our scientific work helps us showcase beauty, conserve biodiversity, and steward our natural world. It is a keystone of our legacy and the lens through which we envision our future. Guided by our science strategy, our mission is to ensure a beautiful tomorrow through conservation, ensuring plant diversity, and by creating landscapes, displays, and sustainable gardens. Our focus on conservation is clear. We are preparing our landscapes for the future by applying climate-resilient planting strategies, advancing restoration research, and strengthening our living collections as conservation resources. We safeguard global biodiversity through partnerships, plant exploration, and conservation horticulture practice, because protecting plants protects the planet. We are committed to growth. Through modernized nursery and greenhouse systems, we are accelerating innovation in floriculture production, tissue culture propagation, and horticultural techniques, enabling us to not only grow ordinary plants in extraordinary ways, but to also learn how to grow rare and endangered plants and save them from extinction. With 4 nationally recognized plant collections, we are pursuing the highest level of accreditation for our core collections, affirming both their excellence and their importance to both science and beauty. We prioritize sustainability by transforming garden waste into resources that are fully utilized across our landscapes. Through inspiration, we connect people to the extraordinary nature of plants. We advance through partnerships with science of cultivation, conservation, sustainability, and stewardship across horticulture, ecology, and agriculture. We work alongside others, solving these global needs. Transformative collaborations with universities, governments, and institutions from around the world to increase the impact of this important work. And we share the stories of our work, reaching millions through our science storytelling. These efforts reflect who we are, a community of passionate experts dedicated to deepening the understanding of plants today and for generations to come. By boldly advancing applied science, we reveal what is possible when beauty, responsibility, and innovation unite. Thank you. So one important takeaway from this video is that we don't do this work alone. Achieving our goals requires collaboration across disciplines, and our impact grows through connection, linking local action to global expertise and shared purpose. Our panelists today represent disciplines across conservation, horticulture, ecology, stewardship, and agriculture, disciplines that ground our science here at Longwood and bring global perspective to some of the most pressing challenges facing plants and the people who depend upon them. In today's discussion, we'll explore why plants matter, now more than ever, what feels different about this moment, and how collaborations across disciplines help shape solutions at scale our changing world requires. To stay focused on the core themes and remain on time today, we won't be able to open up discussions for questions, but we will, however, share a way to follow up at the close of the program. Now I get to introduce our incredible panel. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Paul Smith, who is the Secretary General of Botanic Gardens Conservation International, or BGCI, the world's largest plant conservation network, representing more than 950 institutions across 120 countries. With over 30 years of experience in plant conservation, Paul leads major global initiatives, including the Global Tree Assessment and the State of the World's Trees Report. Previously, he served as the director of the Millennium Seed Bank at the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. And next, we have Emily Mason. Emily is a third-generation horticulturist with more than 25 years of experience developing innovative ornamental plants for gardens worldwide, most recently as global head of marketing for Syngenta Flowers. Her career spans plant genetics, product development, and horticultural strategy, with a focus on resilience, performance, and gardener relevance. She has helped bring more than 50 award-winning plant introductions to market. Third, we have Oliver Bass. Oliver is president and CEO of Natural Lands, where he leads the land's conservation, stewardship, and public engagement efforts across the Mid-Atlantic region. With more than 20 years at the organization, he has advanced conservation strategies that integrate climate resilience, access, and community connection. His leadership reflects a deep belief in the importance of protected landscapes for both nature and people. And last and certainly not least, Dr. Andrew Smith oversees research and farm operations at Rodale Institute, advancing organic and regenerative agriculture through science-based solutions for farmers worldwide. An agronomist and entomologist with more than 20 years of experience, his work focuses on improving soil health, ecosystem resilience, and human well-being. He also lives and works on his own organic family farm. Our panelists. So you've just heard the range of perspectives represented on this panel, spanning conservation, horticulture, agriculture, and land stewardship. Together, they offer a powerful view into how plants connect science, landscapes, and people. To set the stage for our conversation, I'd like to take a step back and focus a moment on where we are today and why plants feel more than ever. So we're going to begin with a brief opening round for about a minute for each panelist. We'll start with Emily. From your vantage point, why do plants matter now more than ever? And what feels different about this moment compared to even a decade ago?
Okay, thank you, Kate. I thought about one word that resonates about plants today, and that word is sanctuary, right? We really need to provide environments where people can continue to connect with nature now more than ever, because we have so many distractions. Our handy little computer that's handheld. So I think this is really a huge difference, right? We're competing with a lot of technology and innovation in other areas. So having a focus on nature and being able to connect with plants, having a safe place to do that, yeah, that's why plants are important today.
I like the idea of sanctuary. That's a great word. Oliver.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me. As the sole non-scientist at the panel, I'll do my best to keep up. We all know the challenges that plant life are facing right now, right? And whether it's invasive species, climate change, invasive insects, diseases. I mean, in this region, we are all witnessing a startling loss, a shocking loss of trees because of those factors. And I think that loss, while terrible and dramatic, also is, I think, a source of inspiration for action for folks. And I'm heartened by the fact that we have seen so many more people starting to understand the importance of doing the right thing in their own little corner of the world. And I take great hope from that.
I do too. Drew.
So from a agricultural perspective, especially an organic agriculture perspective where we don't have, chemicals and synthetic fertilizers are allowed to be used, I see plants as a bridge from atmospheric carbon to soil carbon, where we can store the carbon in the soil, but also it's critical for improving the soil health and growing crops. I see it as biodiversity. I see plants as biodiversity that can harbor insects and birds and bats. These are natural regulators of insects and disease, so we can reduce or eliminate chemicals. And I see them as fertilizer, so we can reduce or eliminate the need for synthetic fertilizers that might end up in our groundwater, in our drinking water, in our streams and estuaries.
Thank you. Last but not least, Paul.
I think the word that I would choose is urgency. We've just more or less completed the global tree assessment. This has been work carried out by hundreds of scientists across the globe looking for the first time at the total diversity of trees out there. And back in 2016, we didn't even know how many tree species there were. The answer is about 58,000, depending on how you define a tree and a shrub. And that is kept up to date. But we also now have the conservation status, in other words, the threat status for those tree species. And about 30% of them, 17,500 species, are threatened with extinction. They fall into that extinction category. And we have over 600 that are known from fewer than 50 individuals left in the wild. So these are species that are going to fall off the planet very, very quickly unless we do something about it. And for every tree, there are thousands of other species that rely on those trees for their life cycle: mammals, birds, insects, lichens, fungi, etc. So it's critical that we act now.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. What's striking is that while all of you bring different perspectives and very different vantage points, there's a shared sense that this moment is both urgent but also full of possibility. So I'd like to zoom out to the global scale, and then we'll work our way towards these ideas to show up on the ground. So we'll start with Paul. Given your role leading the world's largest botanic garden conservation network, from a global perspective, how can botanic gardens act not just individual organizations, but as a coordinated force for biodiversity conservation and climate resilience?
Okay, thank you. Well, I think one thing to bear in mind is that we grow a wider range of plant diversity than any other sector. So I'm really happy to see grow so prominent in your science strategy here. Horticulture is a science. We did BGCI, my organization, maintains a database of the species and cultivars that are grown in the world's botanic gardens. And we only have a subset of data. So we have about 40% of the world's 3,500 botanic gardens have given their data or shared their data with us. And we did a study with Cambridge University in 2017, and that shows that we grow and manage about a third of known plant diversity, so about 120,000 species, and many, many tens of thousands more cultivars, so variations on those species. And that means that we have knowledge on how to grow that wide range of diversity that is in no other sector. And it's essential that we share that information with broader society, with farmers, with horticulturists, with anybody who needs it, with protected area managers and so on. But all of that information is sitting in individual gardens. So the biggest challenge for us is to work collectively to bring that information available to broader society. And no single garden has all of the answers, of course. So it's important also that gardens share that information with each other. Some of it's in the heads of horticulturists. A lot of it is in databases and written down, but it needs to be out there and shared with society. Then we can make a difference.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that is a core component of our strategic plan as we go forward. Moving to the second question, that idea of coordination raises another question. How is the global conservation community shifting from saving what's left towards actively shaping resilient futures for plants and people alike?
Well, I think for one thing, the fact that we grow plants often outside their natural habitats, and by definition, we are recording information about those species. That is the definition of a botanic garden, is that these are documented collections. So we know when they were planted and we know how they're managed. That's all documented. It's hugely useful in understanding resilience. So again, if we take trees as an example, it was the Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria in Melbourne in Australia who, I don't think maybe it was 7 or 8 years ago, set up the Climate Change Alliance of Botanic Gardens. And one of the first things they did was to develop a tool that was taking not only natural distributions of trees, but also information from the world's botanic gardens and from urban street trees, climatic information. So, in what climatic envelope are these trees growing? And if you go onto our website now, you'll see the climate assessment tool, where you can put in your location, you can choose any one of the world's 58,000 tree species, and it will tell you whether that tree is likely to still be there in 50 or 90 years' time. You'll get a traffic light document out there. Will give you a red, an amber, or a green. And that's information which has been developed by the Botanic Garden community, as I say, using natural distributions, but also their own data that we can share with society. And many particularly municipalities and so on, are using that information for street trees. But you can see that it has huge relevance, and for anybody who wants to plant a long-lived perennial, is knowing that that's going to be okay or not.
Thank you. That resiliency, I think, connects really well to our next panelist when we're really thinking about that coordination of how people can be thinking about plants in their backyard and in their daily lives. So, Emily, much of your work focuses on translation, helping people see plants as not scenery, but as something essential. Through your work marketing plants for global audiences at Syngenta, how do you help people see plants not just as background, but as essential to their lives and well-being?
I would say my answer hopefully resonates a lot with your pillar to inspire as part of your strategy. So the great thing about plants and what makes my job very easy is they really tell the story themselves, right? So plants, we all have an emotional reaction to plants, and in general, that's a very positive reaction. Happy can be compared to eating dark chocolate. It's also good for you, makes you feel good. So there's a natural connection, right? But what I find really resonates are a few things. One is using plants in their natural seasons, right? We all feel a natural instinct to get out there and garden in the spring. We use plants to celebrate holidays, to celebrate special occasions, using cut flowers, especially for weddings, and to really express emotions without words. So inspiration, I would say, is a great way to continue to build those connections, and that's something that resonates around the world. It's really boundless, the reaction that you see with plants. So I would say, celebration, emotion, seasonality, as well as solutions. I think a lot of the work being done in plant breeding and looking at new genetics now is using plants to solve problems, right? So I spoke a little bit about sanctuary. I think this is something that's really a lasting trend and a great way to connect with newer gardeners. What you see is in the current generation is they want to solve a problem, whether that's creating, a pollinator garden or a patio garden of vegetables. They want plants with purpose. So,
Thank you. And maybe just to build on that a little bit more, just thinking about how people want plants with purpose. So how do you balance as a plant breeder and developer plants that have ecosystem services, but also are something that people can enjoy?
Sure. Well, we do a tremendous amount of trialing all around the world, and we trial in a lot of different, I would say, not only different environments, but for different purposes again. So we partner closely with botanic gardens. So we want that feedback from botanic gardens as far as, does this plant serve for conservation? Is this plant a plant for all times? We also, we trial with gardeners, we trial with end consumers, because we need to meet the needs of every station in the supply chain, and ultimately have a product that really resonates with the end user and is robust and, again, for all times.
Yeah, not a small challenge,
No.
but one that we're happy to know that organizations like yours are working towards.
Thank you.
So innovation, as Emily said, is not just about aesthetics, and it's about function and resilience. So I think that connects really well to thinking about agriculture and the functional need we have for food and sustenance. And it also often lives at the crossroads of urgency and relevance, pressure to act quickly, and the responsibility to get it right. So I'm going to switch to Drew here to talk about Rodale Institute has the longest running side-by-side trial comparing organic and conventional farming in North America. How does that long-term science help us balance the urgency to act with the need for rigorous evidence-based solutions?
Yeah, so we have that trial started in 1981, so it was the longest running side-by-side comparison of organic and conventional crop production in the world. And it's a randomized, replicated trial. We have a lot of science that's come out of that. And since that time, there's been a lot of similar trials that have been put in place across the United States and globally. I was actually in India last week, and I was not aware of a similar trial that was over 20 years old. But that data has clearly shown to us that we can produce food and highly productive, diverse food systems without using chemicals. So in a way that works with nature, and that allows us. I mentioned about soil carbon sequestration. We're improving soil health, and as we see global climate uncertainty, for every 1% organic matter that's in the soil. The soil has the water holding capacity of an additional 25,000 gallons of water. And in some of our soils at our farming systems trial, we have 1 to 2% higher soil organic matter than in the conventional system. And just to put it in perspective, 1%, if we did that across the entire United States, it's close to all of the water that goes over Niagara Falls in a year. So if we have these periods of climate uncertainty where we don't have rainfall, improving the soil health is a critical part of what we're doing. But we're also reducing chemicals in the environment. And I think one of probably the greatest things that we've seen all across all these trials is that farmers are more profitable in a natural system, and that money stays in local communities because they're not purchasing inputs that are, in many cases, coming from global entities. And we actually, there's studies that have shown that counties have increased median incomes and lower poverty rates where there's higher levels of organic agriculture.
Thank you, Drew. I don't think I'm going to look at Niagara Falls the same way ever again. That's a great statistic. So following the long view of this in the science that's so critical to informing agricultural practice going forward, when we think about Longwood at Grenoble and our goal to practice regenerative agriculture that focuses on both restoring the soil, as you mentioned, is critically important, and the ecosystems while also producing food, how can this approach help shape plant-based systems that are both productive, resilient, and beneficial for both people and the land?
Yeah, so when I saw that question, I thought of Bob Rodale. So Bob Rodale, who's the son of the Rodale Institute founder J.I. Rodale, he really grew the organic industry, and he was really the first one to start using the word regenerative. And he gave us an imperative. We have a 400-acre property in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, and he said you have to improve the soil and the ecosystem of the farm every single year. And we said, okay. And then he said, but you have to produce something. You have to produce food, fiber, or forage for animals because we have a growing population and we have to feed people. You can't just set it aside. So that's not always easy, but I think that's what we need to do. And when you're growing food, you're growing it in nature. You're growing it in and amongst an ecological system, and that's not always the way farmers or industry sees it. They see it not separate from ecology, and there's even a land sparing versus a land sharing. So we very much take the approach in a regenerative or organic agricultural system that we're sharing the land, with the plants and with the animals where we're growing the food. So we have to be respectful of them, and that's part of an entire regenerative system. I think that's what starts. You bring the people and the ecology into it is what gets from just an agricultural system to an organic system to ultimately a regenerative system.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really holistic and an important way to look at that. And so what you're also describing is that, agriculture is not just about extraction, but it's about stewardship. It's about the ecology, and which connects to land conservation and how we define success at the landscape scale. So it transitions well to our fourth panelist. So Oliver, conservation organizations have traditionally been measured by acres protected, but that metric alone no longer feels sufficient. From a land conservation perspective, how are definitions of success evolving beyond protection to include restoration, stewardship, access, and connection?
Well, I think the movement writ large has long kind of lived in that space that if you've saved it, the job is done. And Natural Lands has been through a transition that many conservation organizations around the country has been through, from protecting land from people to protecting it for and with people. And it's a reflection of the need for people to be engaged in and care about this work and want to invest in this work, right? At Natural Lands, we talk about our mission as land for life, nature for all. And specifically, we do that by saving open space. Protection is still vitally important, but also caring for nature and connecting people to the outdoors and each other. And so in terms of the caring for nature, the stewardship piece, that's been in the organization's DNA for a long time. It's why we own 40 nature preserves and our Stoneleigh Natural Garden in Villanova, a total of about 23,000 acres. It's also why we have a staff of about 100, half of them are out working on the land doing restoration. In terms of connection, we have broadened our idea of not just what connection looks like, but who we should be thinking about in recent years, and that all part of nature for all is so important. And so in addition to the 250,000 visitors we have per year on our preserves, and all the many programs we do, we have been much more active in places like Philadelphia, the city of Coatesville, Chester, Pottstown, those kinds of places in recent years, trying to improve not just access to parks and trails and open spaces, but to improve the quality of those places as well.
Thank you. I really like the transition you mentioned from protecting land from people to protecting for and with people. I think that's a really great thing to keep in mind. Transitioning to the second question, how can institutions like Longwood and Natural Lands work together to scale long-term science-informed stewardship across landscapes?
I mean, first of all, Longwood has always been incredibly generous partners to us, and we're grateful for that. Natural Lands does not do original science, really. We tend to host it, right? We have many universities who have Ph.D. candidates and other researchers on the ground on our preserves using those as living laboratories. We have a long-standing partnership with the Stroud Water Research Center at our Stroud Preserve, studying water quality and the impacts of agriculture. Drew and Rodale were part of a multi-year study there just recently. And so, we like to facilitate, but then we also have to learn, right? And let that influence and guide the decisions that we're making on the ground. What comes to mind. I mean, we have a great partnership already, but we've got 23,000 acres of laboratory, and I'd love to figure out how Natural Lands and Longwood might partner together to make better use of that to advance your science goals as well. Because at the end of the day, as our partners learn, we learn, our stewardship improves, and you know, the harsh reality is we don't have the luxury of time to get things wrong, right? We have to understand what's the best approach that we know now and act on it.
Oh, thank you, and I look forward to further collaborations. 23,000 acres of a living laboratory sounds very enticing for our science team, I'm sure. Across all of you, we're hearing a common theme: systems thinking across institutions, disciplines, and landscapes. So I'd like to pull out from individual perspectives for a moment and ask you to reflect more personally on your fields. Each of you works in a space that is often misunderstood or perhaps oversimplified. So this is a question for all of you. What is one thing you wish everyone understood about your field and the impact it can have on our lives in the future? We'll start with Emily.
Wow, okay. Great question, Kate. I would say what I wish that more people knew is how far-reaching horticulture is across the globe. I often go back to supply chain. So one thing that is very special about the industry is that a lot of our seeds and cuttings, seeds and cuttings are coming from offshore farms. These farms are, first of all, great laboratories for sustainability. They also create a tremendous amount of employment for women and people that otherwise, might not have access to fair employment
Thank you.
environments.
Yeah, horticulture is a global force, and sometimes we, as those of us who work in gardens and in the industry, don't take the time always to acknowledge that how globally we're connected. So, Oliver, would you like to take the same question?
Yeah, I think we have the great good fortune of working in a region that has a pretty broad and long-standing conservation ethic, right? People get the need to protect open spaces. What I wish more people knew, and it's starting to happen, is how easy it is to make a meaningful impact in your own little corner of the world, and how incredibly fulfilling it is to do that, right? Just in terms of choosing what you put in the ground, and doing things like leaving leaves. It's one of my favorite good things to do, leaving leaves, right? One less thing to do, yay. So there's so many simple steps, and it's rewarding in terms of the wildlife that you get to attract to your backyard, right? And in both in very tiny form and in larger form. So I think and it can be so impactful, right? If more of us were doing that.
Thank you. Drew?
Yeah, I think I'd want people to know or think that food is medicine, and specifically plants are medicine. So we have an active research in looking at bioactive compounds and as well as phytonutrients. So those are nutrients that are produced by plants. And I was given a talk this week and reviewing some of the literature, some of the new publications from 2025. Now in the United States, over 76% of Americans have at least one chronic disease, and close to 50% have two or more. So we're not healthy, and I actually think that plants can be the answers. And it's not just food. I mean, I work in agriculture. There's other areas where plants can be important, areas to solve for our human health. And actually, that's where a lot of our medicines come from originally, right? So, and probably need to conserve those species because I'm sure there's many discoveries we haven't made yet.
Absolutely, and I think a great segue to Paul.
Yeah, how nature sustains us. That's what I wish everybody understood. And we're becoming more and more of an urban species, more and more disconnected from nature. But no matter where we live, we rely on nature for energy, health, food, climate, all of that. 1 billion people visit the world's botanic gardens each year, and hundreds of millions of school children. So we do have the opportunity to get that message across, but it needs to stick. And I think related to that is the interconnectedness of nature. And it was your own Aldo Leopold who said, "Who but a fool would discard seemingly useless parts?" to keep every cog and wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering. We can't assume that there is redundancy in nature that we can just discard and everything will be fine. So I think that keeping every cog and wheel is absolutely in our own interests, and I wish that was more widely understood.
Thank you. So horticulture is global. Leaving leaves is a really important thing to think about in your backyard. Food is medicine, and plants are medicine, and how nature sustains us. So some really important takeaways about these fields and disciplines. So oftentimes, though, these fields can be siloed. So let's talk about what happens when the walls come down. Horticulture, conservation, ecology, and agriculture are hallmarks of our science strategy, and one of the things that differentiates our science program here at Longwood. But they have often operated separately. Where do each of you see the greatest untapped potential when these disciplines are asked to work together? We'll start again with Emily.
I would say by helping, again, since I'm from the commercial side of the business, I would say helping our R&D teams and understand what's the problem to be solved, right? Because that's really where innovation happens. And so I think also with advocacy, really how can we work together to understand the priorities, where we need to focus our advocacy efforts as well for greater understanding across all segments of agriculture.
I think that's a great point. Oliver.
I mean, it's a little odd to even think of them as separate things to some extent, right? Because we live in a system, and those are just elements of the system. And so I think, we work very hard at Natural Lands to really foster internal collaboration. And so, we've been in this middle of this process of doing some mapping to identify the areas in our region where protection could have the greatest impact. Ecologically, in terms of human access, a whole variety of factors. And that's being done by working together with the folks who work on the ground, our land stewards, and getting their insights, by looking at a variety of different scientific layers, and also considering where are there gaps in access and those kinds of things. And I think at the end of the day, what we hope that will do is create a roadmap for protecting the areas that are most important.
Thank you. Drew?
Yeah, I think a really area of interest is looking at, soil microbiology and the interactions with plant and the ecology that brings in. I mean, we have new techniques now. We have new molecular and genetic techniques that didn't exist before that we can truly understand those. And we actually have good collaborations with the University of Delaware and Stroud-Woodard Research Center that has a microbiologist there. And we made several novel discoveries about some of those bioactive compounds that I was talking about that are clearly linked to the microbes in the soil and how they interact with the plant. So I think there's so much work there that's untapped and undiscovered.
It's a universe in and of itself, I think, sometimes. Paul?
I think within our sector there are deep sort of cultural reasons why horticulture and science are siloed. We have still in some cultures the idea of horticulturists are just gardeners, people with a spade. That's something we have to overcome culturally. And I think one of the great things that brings people together, and actually is this new global biodiversity framework that 200 governments have signed up to, which has in it Target 2, which is to restore 30% of degraded lands by 2030. Now, believe me, if you want to restore degraded lands, you don't want to let your scientists loose on your lands. You really want people who know how to grow, manage, conserve plants. And it's really essential that the science and the horticulture comes together there. Your scientists can help to monitor and so on, but we need those horticultural skills. And many years ago, I was in the Kew Horticultural Diploma, the final day when everyone got their certificates and everything, and they had invited David Attenborough to come. And his message to the horticulturists was, you will inherit the earth because your skills will become so important. We're still waiting for horticulturists to inherit the earth, but I take his point.
That's a great thing to aspire to, for sure. And Wonderful. So we're going to talk a little bit now about shaping influence at very different but deeply connected scales. So in this, we're going to also open up to all panelists. What responsibility and opportunity do institutions like Longwood have to shape not just beautiful spaces, but the future of science-led work at a global scale? Emily, we'll start with you.
So I would hope that it's continuing to connect with the young people, that maybe this might be their first experience with plants and nature. And so making sure that that connection is fostered. And yeah, I would say that would be my primary focus, would be, yeah, making sure that the generation now, which is a very thoughtful generation, that they find a way to connect with nature and be inspired. I think this is really the role that Longwood excels at, and botanical gardens in general.
No, fantastic. And hopefully they inherit an earth we're proud to hand off to them.
I mean, it has to do with curriculum, you know, I mean, really keeping the curriculum as a priority also for young people today.
Thank you. Oliver.
What came to mind for me in this context was the inspire part of the science strategy, because you have such incredible reach and impact and such an incredible audience. And beauty is really valuable. It does wondrous things for our soul, and especially in these trying times. I don't want to minimize beauty by itself as a wonderful outcome. But we need to translate that in ways that help people understand and learn and maybe change. And so I think Longwood has a way here to really help make that happen. Natural Lands is always thinking of the people who visit our preserves. They can have a lovely experience walking and nature, and that's great, but how do we help them understand the intentionality behind what it is they're seeing and how those systems work? It's a real challenge to go from just an education experience, or an entertainment experience potentially, to something that really inspires and creates change.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's already been touched a lot throughout the panel, but that connection to nature, so that responsibility to connect, especially young people, to nature. And I think about a research study that was done where they did 2 interventions, one out in nature and one inside a building. And 30 days later, the group that did the intervention out in nature had a boosted immune system over the other group. So I would suggest that everyone that walks through the conservatories today are probably improving their health simply by walking through and connecting and touching with and smelling, putting that in your body. So
Step away a little bit healthier. That's a great takeaway. Paul.
I think all of the research shows that botanic gardens are trusted organizations. They're apolitical. They're safe spaces where people feel that they can talk about nature and experience it as well. But I think, along with the other panelists, it's about how we mobilize those visitors. I think one group we shouldn't ignore, and often we do, and we're a little bit bashful about, is that most of our visitors, if we're honest, are affluent. They're getting on a bit. I'm not in any way looking at this audience, who you all look very young to me. But why not mobilize that group of people? Because it's going to take 10, 20, 30 years for our young people to be influential in politics and in leadership. Why not mobilize some of our older visitors to become activists in the gentlest, nicest possible way?
Thank you, Paul. It's really great perspectives from all of you. So I think what we want to try to do is to close out with one final question. And with so much attention on crisis and loss, what gives each of you hope right now? Whether a partnership, a scientific breakthrough, or a shift in mindset that suggests we're moving in the right direction. Emily?
This one was the most difficult question for me because there's so many things that I'm excited about. Partnership being one of them. This is a great example. But I think the most exciting thing for me is actually what's going on with AI and science right now. A lot of us feel uncertain about the benefits of AI, but what I can say is we're able to explore very fast and very cost effectively things that we would not have taken the time to invest in the past. So when we talk about food as medicine, now we have the capabilities to do genetic mapping, genome mapping. We can do plant breeding now. We don't have to wait to grow the plant to see if it expresses the desired trait. We can do this now with AI. So this allows us to make improvements very quickly, and again, it leads us to have a lot more knowledge about plants that may have been overlooked in the past, simply because at the time might not have had the economic value to make the ROI to do that type of genetic mapping. So I think when we think about plants as medicine, this is a really interesting time for all of us in horticulture.
And also where I think collaborations start to open
Absolutely.
up. Even
And
more.
not just plants as medicine, also conservation, reforestation, and regeneration as well.
Absolutely. Oliver.
There is so much to be hopeful about. And, you know, people do actually care. They really do. There are communities, counties, states across this country every year that ask voters to tax themselves to pay for land conservation. And it's almost always successful, 80, 90% of the time. So people are actually, even in this environment, saying, yes, this is so important to me, I'm willing to pay more in taxes to make it happen. So I think sometimes we're not aware of the good stuff that's happening. And the other thing I'll say that gives me hope, I was upstairs before this started, and a little boy about yay high came walking over to me and started going, look at that, look at that, look at that, he was so excited. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's going to take.
Thank you, Oliver. Drew?
Well, I'm excited that an organization like Longwood would be thinking about, you know, agriculture, honestly, and the intersection of growing food and nature. So that's really exciting. And I think young people, you know, I mean, they're really asking questions about how things are grown, how things are produced, you know, where our clothes even come from. Is there petroleum products in our clothes? Are they natural? So I think I'm hopeful. They're pushing, they're driving us to think, you know, not just think, but act differently.
Thank you. Last but not least.
Yeah, I'd agree with Drew. I think, you know, we have a lot to say about Gen Z and so on, but they do care. They care very much. And I think for us working particularly in plant conservation, it's a great privilege to feel that you are part of the solution. And we have no shortage of candidates. We recently advertised a job which was minimum wage. I mean, living in London, and we had hundreds of applicants because conservation was in the title. So there is a whole cohort there coming through who are absolutely passionate about this and want to make a difference. And I think that's where most of my hope lies.
Mm-hmm. The next generation. So as we wrap up, a few themes have come through today. We've heard that plants matter now more than ever, and not because of what we're losing, but because of what they make possible. Whether it's protecting biodiversity, whether it's strengthening resilience, whether it's food or medicine, and deepening our connection between people and the natural world. So across these disciplines, there's a clear shift underway, from safeguarding what exists to actively growing knowledge and solutions, from working in isolation to stewarding systems that can sustain us over the long term. What's especially powerful here is that this work depends on collaboration and connection across all of these disciplines, from global networks to local gardens like ours, and recognizing how these all intersect, where science can be translated into action and shared to inspire others. So for us at Longwood, this launch of our science strategy is an important milestone, and we hope that you'll continue to join us through our science series as this work evolves. You can see up here our upcoming science series. So thank you again for being a part of this moment and for your continued engagement with Longwood Science. And please join me in thanking our fantastic panelists today for their insight, their leadership, and the work they do every day.